arrangements. So we'll start with the session. So morning session, where we had stopped is we had tried to understand that we can take IoT data and we can be able to analyze algorithms. So there in the process, we have looked at how k-means, KNN, then we have shown you how Adabos classifier can be used. Then we had shown a preliminary of how to use a neural network model also. I'm again putting the same point, whatever may be the data that you analyze, you should be very clear that you are introducing the concept of models using any approaches because you want to reduce the number of false positives. What is positive data, what is negative data depends on the problem that you're working with IoT here, right? So next, we will start our discussion. So we will share the screen. Okay. So where we left is from the where we left is from the deep learning introduction where we started with the neural network, right? Neural network implementation. So we'll go back to that and we will show you the results, right? So this is what we completed. So our data that we are looking at is a data that is going to come as part of an analysis from IoT. So we have taken a live data which is already processed, and that data we are trying to feed it as a static data to the model. So here we are using a basic neural network. So as I told you in the morning session, we are trying to run through with by passing the parameters. So the parameters we are passing is for training and testing. So the usual thought process is to preserve 30% for testing. Then when you want to create a model in Keras, we will say model equal to sequential. Then at every layers, we will specify what is the type of activation function we want to use. Then we compile the model, right? Then we fit the model. So this is what is the difference in here. So as I told you, every time there is a forward propagation, backward propagation that happens. A forward propagation will estimate the error and the backward propagation will go and adjust it and we'll check again the error. So it will keep on increasing its a learning component, that's a learning rate value. And based on the number of epochs that you provide, right, it will run and it will show you the final accuracy. Now, as such, we are trying to create the model. It means that here the meaning is it has run for 60 epochs, right? And its accuracy it has got is 0.07. Then next follow on, what we want to do is we want to evaluate the model. So here we are trying to give testing data, right? So first what we have done is we are done with the training data, then we are giving the test data. So given the test data, our interest part is we are interested in knowing how much amount of our IoT data is getting predicted properly. So this is the performance results from the neural network part. So here you can see the accuracy we are printed. So as such, the accuracy is not the best compared to what we saw from K-means and KNN. In K-means and KNN, we got an accuracy close to 90%. Okay, so this is an output to get you a feel. Yes, it is possible for you to code ANN, that is artificial neural network, with Python, wherein you are able to take a data. So the data that you're taken here is a IoT data here, right? Now the next step forward is like usually there is a question about all these three technologies together. One side people talk about cloud, other side people talk about fog, then other side people talk about edge computing. Okay, so let's take in a small understanding for each of this. See, usually when you are trying to take a data and the data is now available, let's take you are trying to take up an agricultural application itself, right? Let's take our agriculture data because that's what we start in the morning. So if you take your agriculture data and you are saying that my data is no more on my system, my data is on the cloud, then the question would be is like, what is the data? Where is the cloud existing? You would say that I have a Hadoop cluster or I have a Spark cluster through which I'm processing, right? So when you are doing something like this, it means that what you have implemented is a cloud computing approach, right? Now, this approach will be giving you a characteristic saying it is a centralized approach. Reason is like you have something as a cluster, right? And so automatically there is a server, there's a set of clients that are being processed. Now, the same thing if you are fixing on to the next concept, that's your fog computing. So the concept of fog computing would say that it is differs from cloud because it has a decentralized right? And it is having a distributed approach. that's a difference. So you can see the difference, right? So when you come to cloud, you will land with a centralized model because you will have servers and clients. But when you come to fog, it's not like that. You will have a distributed approach. Plus, it will be a decentralized approach. The third thing which people always debate is like about the edge computing. So as far as edge computing is concerned, the keyword is something like this. Rather than taking the data to the cloud and trying to process the data at the cloud and then return back the results, it is possible to for you to understand that if there are servers, right, and clients, let's take for example, connected to an application. Let's take your application is a precision agriculture application. So as the data is captured, right, if you have the capability to process the data where it is being generated, right? Let's take you take an example. You would say that there's a network. Network is a collection of sub networks, right? So rather than taking the data to from the node to the sub network and then to the network, is it possible for you to do the all the computation of the sub network alone itself? The advantage would be is, the data need not travel a longer distance from the node to the bigger size of the network where the cloud cluster exists. So in this case, what is the advantages since the data is getting captured and processed closer to the place where the data is getting captured. So the performance of the model will be very high. So this is what is edge computing is. So edge computing will say that, is it possible for you to process the data at the place or closer to the place where the data is getting generated? If you can do that, so what you have done is something called as an edge computing. So in this, nowadays people talk about possibilities of making all these applications as mobile. So people say that I am trying to do a mobile computing based cloud development. Okay, so this is how the total focus is now moving on. Can you shift most of your models and algorithms and make it to run with mobile apps like Android apps like that? Yes, that's also the next level of shift, right? So this is the next thing which I want you to know, right? Okay, the bigger picture is cloud, but the related new technologies is cloud computing, fog computing, and edge computing. So it is a bottom line statement. I'm keeping you to understand whatever may be the application, the challenge is the application only, right? So if the application is very challenging, you can keep a shift to the way in which the application processes the data by making it as a cloud or a edge or a fog computing, right? This is the next one which I want you to know. Then next forward, what I would like to discuss with all of you is basically the next architecture which I want to take in. So the next architecture which I would like to take from deep learning for discussion is your RNN, right? Recurrent neural network. See, CNN is a very primitive architecture. You can actually say that CNN can be used for multiple applications. I'll try to show you CNN for sensor data, which will actually come from a camera, right? That will be the next part I'll be showing. But before that, let's quickly see through RNN so that we will discuss how LSTM based approach can be taken for an IoT dataset, right? As far as RNN is concerned, the expansion of RNN is its recurrent neural network. So the concept here is like, we will say that there is a neuron, but it is called as a recurrent neuron. So the recurrent neuron will actually take an input and it will try to preserve some relationship with the current input with the previous input, right? So this is because the recurrent neuron has the knowledge to process the incoming data and compare it with the previous data that it already has learned, right? So the formula here would be like, we will try to specify the formula for the current state. So the current state is given as h suffix t. So h suffix t is expressed as function of h suffix t minus 1, that's a previous state, comma the current input. The current input would be x suffix t, right? So in this, the activation function we will be generally using is a tanh activation function. So h suffix t will be expressed as tanh of WHH product of into h suffix t minus 1. So what is this WHH is the weight of the recurrent neuron. WXH is the weight at the input neuron, right? Okay. So, and the rest of the parameters are corresponding to the values with respect to the input. So X corresponds to the input here. Now, once we have this h suffix t, right? Okay. Then we can actually calculate y suffix t. Y is this one, right? Okay. Y is your final output. So what is y suffix t would be is y suffix t would be given as w suffix hy, right? W suffix hy multiplied by h suffix t here, right? See, normally when you look at cloud, people nowadays use cloud for most of the applications. It can be either for video or people use it for text processing. What I'm talking to you is about NLP, natural language processing based grammars for text recognition like that, right? So I'm talking on the similar lines with RNN. So when you talk about RNN, there are generally 4 types of RNN, where it is one-to-one. That means you have one input, you have one output. One to many, one input, many output. Many to one, that is many input and one output. Here you will have 2 variants, that is in many to many. One variant is number of input will be equal to number of output. Number of input is not equal to number of output, right? So these are the variants in RNN. I know we are discussing after lunch. I hope people will get to the session and understand the things. Now next, what we are moving towards is the step-by-step process of how RNN will work, right? As far as RNN is concerned, RNN actually takes through a text and tries to process the text, right? It is generally understood for text recognition, right? So let's take your text as HELL. Each character here will be encoded as an equivalent binary. This will be done by using the one-not encoding. Morning we have discussed about what is one-not encoding. So we have equivalent binary for all the 4 letters, right? The next is the value that has to be provided for the weight. So you need an initial weight matrix. So the weight matrix will be 3 cross 4, right? Why it's going to be 3 cross 4 would be is like we have 3 values and it's going to be for 4-bit representation, right? So it is 3 cross 4 here. Now let's take, we get the first letter. First letter we are giving for the input is H, right? So what we need is we need to calculate this parameter, right? We need to calculate Wx because we are giving input, right? So we need Wx, right? That is Hx into H suffix t. So we need to calculate that. You can see here. So we have got the weight matrix, which is already provided, multiplied by this one. So when you multiply this, then what we will be expecting is, we will be expecting the equivalent first value to be generated. That is 0.28, 0.90, 0.53, right? Now next, we are now moving on to the recurrent neuron. So when we have the recurrent neuron, what we assume is the weight is going to be one value. So we are assuming the weight value to be 0.42 and the bias value to be 0.56, right? So if you're going to give a letter H, so what about the previous state of H's? There is not going to be any previous state for H because the first letter being read is only H. So the previous state value will be assumed to be 0, 0, 0. So this is 0, 0, 0, which is assumed to be H suffix t minus 1. Right? So the weight we are giving is 0.42. Bias is 0.456, right? So we can multiply it by this. So this is the resultant value for after multiplication, 0.56, 0.56, 0.56. Now the third step is we want to get the current state. So the current state is given as tan h of sum of this 2. So what is the sum of this 2 is what we got with the original given h, right? And what we got given h with no input previous states. So with no previous state value being known, the values are 0.56, 0.56, 0.56 provided here. With the value of h being provided, the calculated value is 0.28, 0.90, 0.53 provided here, right? Now find the sum of it. When you find the sum of it, I think it's direct. 0.28 plus 0.56 is 0.85. Similarly, second row, third row. Now, what is h suffix t would be is tan h of the value that you got, that is 0.85, 1.46, and next is 1.10, right? So when you apply tan h on it, the equivalent value you're getting here is this. Now the next step is, now when you're getting E to the network, right? After H, we are supposed to get E. So when we get E to the network, we apply the same formula here, right? So the previous value that we got is 0.69, 0.89 and 0.80, right? This 0.42 is a static value that is being supplied. You can see here the static weight that is being supplied for the recurrent neuron. So 0.42 into the previous value that we calculated, that is h suffix t, multiply it and add it with what we have as a value that we got initially for h. Initial value that we got with respect to h is what? 0.56. Just add it with this. You will get a final value, right? Now you take this value, right, and keep it for reference on the right side. Left side would be WXH, which we already got in the original part. When we started with the model itself, we got a WXH. So take the WXH, multiply it with the equivalent to 1 encoded code of E. Now multiply it, you should be able to get this, right? Now step 5, what we are supposed to do is we are supposed to calculate h suffix t for E that is being provided. So what is the values that we get? One value is this, right? That is 0.84, 0.87, then 0.09, right? You can see here, right? Add it with the original value, that is 0.86, 0.95 and 0.90. So tan h of this, you will get a resultant value, right? Now the recurrent neuron as such will be able to produce the output very well because we got all the values calculated, right? So now this is the resultant value that we have. Now we have expressed it as the given text character HE as class level probabilities, right? So the class level probability for the next letter is what? L that is going to occur is the class level probability will be expressed as the softmax of these values. That is 0.41, 0.19, 0.16, and next is 0.22. What is this values is? This values is calculated by applying softmax function on this y of t. On this y of t, if you apply softmax function, you will get this values. So these are the values that will be provided as input to predict the next letter that will come up. Next letter would be is L, right? Okay. This is the learning that I want you to know for recurrent neural network, right? Now, next, what we are going to take through is, we are going to take through an understanding on developing applications, right, with respect to cloud. See, when you talk about IoT, as I told you, it's Internet of Things. So you have data coming from different sources. One type of example is look at sensor data, right? So where the data is actually as CSV file as we process in the morning. Now, the second example we are going to take here for IoT based data would be is where the data is going to come, but the data is going to carry some information which are going to be videos, right? So if I have video data for an IoT as part of an IoT application, can I process it? So where will this be useful? I think people will agree with me. This will be used in terms of surveillance, right? Or people will be saying that I can use it for agriculture, right? For monitoring what? You can monitor the plants, right? Now here, where is all this can be taken forward? Recently, when I happened to interact with one of the experts from the ICAR, Indian Council of Agriculture Research, they were trying to share a very important requirement of recognizing banana-based diseases, right? India is now getting a lot of threat to this disease because reason is like the disease is getting spread for the banana. And the problem here is some states are leading in the banana. I think you people know, right? If you talk about Kerala, they will say that we are leaders of developing or growing more amount of banana for their own reasons, right? Now, once this disease is coming up, now the problem is finding the disease is one challenge. I think people can understand what I'm saying. Finding the disease is one challenge, right? With respect to the banana here. But the second issue is people are having a little bit debate in saying that some people do not know that it is having a disease and they assume it is not having a disease and goes for packing and goes for selling also on the other side. And even for us, when we try to take a banana, we might ignore the understanding saying that it has a disease or not. I think you can try to see here, right? If you look at a banana like this, each one of you will have a doubt. Okay, have I consumed a banana which is having patches like this? But this is also said as a disease. I think people can understand what I'm saying, right? So what about this type of bananas? Okay, people say when my bananas at home are rotten, right? So there is a possibility that it looks like a disease, right? What about bananas on the which are not being cut, right? So how do you recognize it? So they say that, okay, can you find out the circular black spots? If there are black spots around, then there is a possibility that it is having a disease, right? All these are examples of IoT based applications, Internet of Things, right? Because you can have actually a robot which could have some sensors. The sensors will be able to capture the images, and then it will be able to quickly say, yes, this particular cultivation field has some spots of bananas which has got some diseases, right? I'm showing a limelight, so I think people can get the direction forward because most of you work on research in the similar lines, right? So now the thing is, like, if we can have a robo which can walk around the farm, right? And whenever it is walking around the farm, it actually take pictures. It will be able to do, right? Because robots as such will have camera sensors. Can it take picture and can it quickly inform to us saying that, yes, this particular plantation area is having the effects of diseases, right? So that's a discussion here, which we are taking in forward. In line of thought, I will say what we tried from our team some time back. What we tried from our team is, like, we tried looking at how the tea leaf can be classified, right? So can you classify tea leaves, right? Okay, so the advantage is, like, when you look at tea leaves, so it is very interesting for you to know that tree leaves are very big as a plant I'm talking about, right? Okay, and it's very hard for you to actually go around and cut tea leaves, right? So human beings as such are being employed who actually uh, take up the tea leaves and they categorize the tea leaves. So the challenge would be is, like, can you have a algorithm or a problem which is having a model which is running as part of an robo which can go around and cut the tea leaves. Cut the tea leaves in the sense, whichever tea leaves are good tea leaves, whichever tea leaves can be plucked. I think people can understand what I'm saying, right? So humans generally, they go around and pluck the tea leaves, right? But instead, if the robo can have an arm which can actually go around and pluck the tea leaves which are need to be plucked, it saves a lot of labor problems, right? Especially in the tea estates. So that was a thought process. So if we need to do something like that, okay, how does our code look like? That's going to be our discussion here, right? So if you need to start doing something like that, we need to have some data. So that's the first question for all of us. So let's talk from the data perspective first. So we will show you some sample data that we started doing, right? So now when you want to take it as a problem with deep learning, you need to say that the data sets will be categorized into three categories. One for training, one for validation, one for testing. So training, validation, and third is testing. So training data, again, you need some images which will say it is positive images like tea leaves, right? And when you come to the negative images, you need to come and show that what are all negative images that could be there. See, usually people have questions about this positive and negative. It is like this. When it's a tea leaf classification with an IoT based problem, then you would say that, yes, all these are tea leaves which are correctly as positive samples. What could be negative samples is which are not tea leaves, but they share common characteristic. For example, if you look at this image, you would agree with me saying that this image doesn't have a tea leaf image, but it resembles in terms of color. So whatever best you can actually take for a tea leaf classification as a negative sample, you can take. You can see here, no, this also has a similar green color, right? The reason is the more amount of data that we are feeding for training, the better your model is, right? So that's why people say that train your model with more amount of data. When you have more data, the intelligence of the model that you have created is also very high. The same thing is applicable here. So we have two types of data here. One data would be basically for positive samples, one for negative. This will come under the training part, right? The next is a validation data. So what is this validation data is like, see, when you say you got 100% data, it is a good practice that you can take 60% for training, 20% for validation, 20% for testing. I'll repeat for you, 60% for training, 20% for validation, 20% for testing. So what is this validation is, you see, validation data set will allow you to fine tune the model. See, you start your deep learning with some number of parameters, but what is the parameter value that gives you a good result that you can conclude with your validation part, right? Now we are keeping on talking about data, parameters, and so on, right? Let's see how all this goes together. See, this is what I'm taking from is the internet source, right? If you go to playground or TensorFlow, you will get an UI which will actually quickly show you what happens, right? To any model data that is being trained, actually show you that there is something called as data for every problem, right? If you can see here, it will show you that there is some data. Now, somebody was asking where deep learning has to be used compared to machine learning, right? Some problems cannot be solvable with machine learning. Like if you look at data like this, no, building a non-linear kernel around this data, which will go for a complete class-wise separability is very, very hard, right? There, deep learning is very much solution, right? If your data is having lot of non-linearity in the presence and the way in which it is being distributed, so a non-linear kernel from machine learning is also not working. You need to go for deep learning. And reason is when you are going for deep learning, you'll be able to learn the data better. I'll show you also the UI here. Let's take deep learning as one point. You would say that I've got some features. I have some neurons, as I told you, right? You can increase your hidden layer. For each hidden layer, you can have your own number of neurons. This is the difference of deep learning with the general neural networks. At every hidden layer, you can have your own number of neurons. This hidden layers is what is called as convolution layer, pooling layer, based on the deep learning architecture that you work. And this is all the other parameters that you can manually set, right? You can specify your activation function, whichever activation function you want to say. You can specify your regularization rate. Any problem will be generally a regression problem or a classification problem, right? If you formulate it as a classification problem, then if you can go and run the data, so what happens is what it will start showing you on the right side is what happens to the original data. With the epochs getting increased, what happens is it will try to classify the data, and every time it will try to evaluate these two parameters. One is test loss and next is training loss, right? It is expected that the test loss and training loss will become minimal, right? And when this becomes minimal, the accuracy at the training and testing level is also high. Both are inverse, right? Okay, so training loss and test loss has to be minimal and accuracy has to be high. That's the advantage of going through the steps. What I'm showing you is a set of parameters that are being provided, right? This is nothing of an interactive environment where you can write code and all. It's just quickly for you to understand, okay, what happens in a deep learning approach, right? Now, keeping this as input, our discussion is about the data, right? So now we have got data for training, we have got data for testing also. Now, let's come down to the code part. So if you have a data which is running as part of the code, and that code has to actually evaluate your tea leaves, right? So how can your code look like? So this would be a way in which your code look like. And I think every one of you will agree with me saying that Python is not a new language for any embedded IoT based application, right? If you go and type Python for IoT, people will say, yes, it's a good choice to go for Python for IoT application, right? Okay. So what we are now seeing here is the coding part. So the first lines of code will actually include the packages, right? So first we want to use Keras. From there, we want to include the models. So the type of model is going to be sequential model. So what is this model is, again, as we have been saying from the beginning, we are trying to stack the layers, keep one or more layers as part of the model, right? Then next, we are trying to specify the model parameters. You can see here, we are trying to specify the model parameters here. The next forward, what we are trying to do is we are trying to add the new set of layers. So again, convolution, activation, pooling. Then rest is all the parameters that we want to provide. Then we are calling SGD, that is your stochastic gradient descent, because we told you already that we can estimate the parameters using the optimizers, right? So SGD is your stochastic gradient descent. So there you supply the parameters for executing SGD, right? Then what you do is you call the rest of the methods for data generation order. Now the important thing which I would like to show you is like, see, when you are uh, trying to fit your model, right? You will actually say, what are the number of steps per epoch, right? Here we are supplying it as 10,000. Number of epochs will be 10, 30, right? This number of epochs is what we had tried to show you in the UI. If you can see in the UI, this is your epoch, right? So number of epochs is what you can specify in your code. So number of epochs is specified as 30. Then validation data we are supplying, right? Then what we are trying to do is we are trying to create a model. See, the output of every deep learning model will actually preserve the weights, right? So what you will actually get from your deep learning model is what? You'll get the weights only. So once you want to do a testing, you need not have the original source. What you can actually start doing is we can start using the model that you have created. So the model that you have created here is first try underscore t dot h5, right? Okay. So one second, I'll show you the folder also for it. Yeah. Yes. So you can see here, it will show you a model file, right? Which is showing you 18/11/2020. I'll go and delete this file, right? Okay. Now I've opened you the coding file, which I'm discussed right now. Now, when I run my model code, right, this code as such will take the data, which is there in the validation folder. Can you find? See here, C drive / data / validation. So now this is taken as input and it is trying to create a model file. So the model file is the model file that will be used for evaluating the test data. Please understand now what we are doing is the training process, right? Now we'll go and execute. So it will go and run the code. So now it will take some time. As we told you, we are running for 30 epochs, right? So epoch 1 to 30. Every time it will estimate the loss, right? Right? And it will show you the accuracy that it is estimating whenever it is going with one epoch to the other, right? You can see on the right side what I'm showing you. Okay. Now 30 epochs is over. Now the model is now created, right? Now if you go, yeah, it is now completed everything. So now it is showing me what is the validation accuracy, validation loss, right? And what is the total loss, right? Now if I go to my folder, you can see the model file is created. Can you see here, 15th December 2020 to 14. Now this is the model file that we will use for testing the T image. Now the model file is ready. Now the training process of deep learning is completed, right? Now this model file can be used for testing the data. So when you give a test data and you try to run the code, okay, the code is also there for testing, right? This is your code. Now, when you give the data for running, so here it will try to generate a temporary CSV file, and there it will try to show you the performance level matching, right? So if you can see here, yes. Now, each of this are corresponding to one image. Please understand. And this is your test data, right? So how many test images we have given? Test images we have given is 60, right? So for each test image as 60, right? 60 images, it will try to show you the possible error with which it matches. Please understand this error is what I told you in the morning session, which if you still have a doubt, this error corresponds to what we showed you in the neural network model. Because basics do not change. Yes, so this is the error, right? So fine. So what it will show is for every individual tea leaf image, it will show you the error value that it is getting. Now this error value will give us an inference saying this is a error. Let's take 0.10 fractional zeros 256 is a error for first image. 0.10 fractional 739 is the error for second image. 0.10 fractional 322 is the error for third image. Now, which is matching is again dependent on your choice. You can actually get your training data, and on the training data, you can try to calculate the error. And you can check against this test data how much this error matches to the particular class. Now, this is my test data. The test data is showing that for the first image, it is 0.10256. It might say that it is matching to the class 0. 0.10739, it might say that it is matching to class 1, right? Okay. So whichever has got the lowest error, based on it, you can associate it to the individual class. Okay. So this is what we did. This is a way in which you can actually connect your way of developing a deep learning model for tea leaf classification. Okay, right? Now this is the next one that I want you to know, because there's a lot of scope for people to work with vision sensors. If you go and type vision sensor and IoT, you'll get a lot of spaces of research, right? Today, there's a lot of focus of people saying that, okay, if sensors can acquire camera level data, can it be given for processing for applications? Yes, it is possible. So what I've shown you is for the images of a tea leaf recognition. Okay, this is one which I want you to know. Any questions from the participants? Any questions from the participants? Please clarify. Participants, do you have any questions? Please put in the chat box. Any questions? If there's no questions, please put no. No, sir. Okay, fine. Right. Now, the next one which I want you to understand is, if there is a data which is part of an IoT application, right? And if it has to be classified for attacks, right? And assume that this data has to be processed with my models. Is it possible to do that? Yes, that's a question here. So there you can actually look at this data set. If you can go to the internet and type IoT botnet data set, please make a note. If you can go and type IoT botnet dataset, you will get sources on the internet, which you can see here from UNSW dataset source. This UNSW dataset will actually show you an example of an IoT botnet dataset here. If you can see here from the diagrammatic perspective, what happens here is there is a cluster of nodes, right? And the data is captured, right? And here as such, the data is captured for handling the attacks, right? So if there are sensors and devices which are connected for a network, and assume that the network is getting attacked, right? How can you handle it? That's a question here. So that's a very good research problem. In fact, if you want to do, you can try this line of thought also. So in this line, we will show you what we have progressed from the deep learning perspective. To understand that, we will move on to the next architecture. So the next architecture which I want you to know is this one, LSTM. See, LSTM as such, it stands for long short-term memory. So what does this mean is, if you have a long data, which is having as a sequence model, right? For example, if you open your textbook, every line of a textbook in the page is a single sentence. But how much length it is there, people will understand that if it's a smaller textbook, it's a smaller sentence. If it's a bigger textbook, maybe I might have a bigger sentence, right? So if there is a data which is as a set of sentences, and I'm interested in modeling such a data using a deep learning architecture, there the solution is LSTM. So if you look at your data, which is in form of an Excel sheet, that's your CSV file, each row of data is a one sequence. And if you're looking for an architecture to handle it, there the best solution which I would suggest to people is to go for LSTM. LSTM is a very good architecture for it. Let's look at this. See, LSTM, as I told you, it can remember patterns. Patterns in the sense, once it is trying to read the first sentence, second sentence, it can compare with the first sentence. You can take it at a preliminary aspect like that. But disadvantage of RNN, what we have discussed earlier, no? What RNN would be doing is like it will transform itself completely whenever it is getting a new information, right? Okay, so but LSTM is not like that. So because of this, we say that LSTM can be taken for problems which are as sequences. Now, in this LSTM, you will have generally two states. One state called as self state, and next is called as hidden state. So the theory of LSTM is LSTM will consist of memory blocks where each block is called as a cell, right? And the state corresponding to the cell is called as a cell state, and the state corresponding to the hidden part would be calling itself as a hidden state. Here you will have something called as memory blocks. So the memory blocks purpose is they should remember the things like us, like human beings, like us, we have a memory always, and we should be able to do some manipulations, right? Using major mechanisms, which is called as gates. So what is this gates are? You have something called as a forget gate. What is this forget gate is when you don't need an information, the cell's value will be removed, right? The cell state will be there, but you don't want that information. You can remove the cell state and there will be done by something called as a forget gate, right? Let's look at the architecture of LSTM. The given inputs that you're providing, whatever inputs, no, that's your vector data, so CSV, for example, will be multiplied by the weight matrices, right? And it will be added with the bias, right? So we are multiplied by the weight matrix and it will be added with the bias. Following to that, you will apply a sigmoid function. The resultant of sigmoid function will give you values. As you all know, you will have values from 0 to 1. So what is this values is you will have 0, you will have 1, or values in between 0 and 1 will come up. Each corresponding values will correspond to a number that you have in the cell state, right? Okay. So if 0 is going to be an output of a particular cell state, then that it means that the forget gate wants the cell state to forget the information. If 1 is an output of a cell state, then it means that the forget gate wants to remember the entire information. Okay, so forget gate will have 0 or 1 deciding its operation. So when you go for LSTM, input gate and output gate will have most of the work being done. So this is generally a theory about how LSTM works. Now, keeping this as our understanding, let's go and see how can you analyze an IoT based data which is available and see how LSTM can be applied, right? So here I'll show you a code which we have started with. Yeah, okay. You should be able to see the screen. So here as such, the first line of code as such is for normal libraries, that is NumPy, Pandas, right? Then we are taking some data which is coming from the input, right? So this data is already available from the Kaggle. So we are taking the data as a live feed. You can see here Kaggle/input/malware detection/tech_data.csv. Then what we are doing is we are calling a tree classifier because we want to generate the rules. Morning, somebody was asking about, can we use ID3 for deep learning? Yes, I'm showing you an example for this here. So here we are importing extra trees classifier. Then we are calling extra trees classifier. It will populate the values to the forest. So now this has got all the rules, right, of the given data that you have taken. So data is the live data that we have from the Kaggle, right? Then next, what we do is we want to find the length of the features, which is there in the original data. So the total length is 55. That means number of features is 55. Here at this point, I should talk about dimension also. So the dimension of the data that we have here is 55. Number of features is equal to number of dimension. So it is 55. So length of the features which is being extracted is 18, right? And these are the features that we want. We might not need all the features. So we are printing which are all the important features, right? Important features that I'm selecting based on the normalized values here. Then what we do is we try to call through the scaling operation. Scalar is important because, as I told you in the morning, there are possibilities for noise to happen in the data. So you can call this scalar. Then what I would like you to see here is, yes, from the LSTM part. So here, what we are doing is we want to use LSTM. So we are saying import LSTM. Now we want to create a model, right? When we want to create a model here, so the operation would be is like we need to specify the layers. So we are adding as many number of GRU units, right? So once this is done, we are trying to compile the model, fine. Then we are trying to fit the model, right? So resultant of it on the live, with the data being provided, it will be able to show us these two values. One value is going to be the resultant from the optimizer, right? Then that's a loss. And next parameter it will try to show us is the accuracy part, right? It's a small implementation which I want you to see, right? So this would have got you an idea that yes, I can actually take a botnet dataset which is available and I can try to run through a LSTM code. There are already existing codes on the internet. What I'm showing is what we are trying to do with our team, right, as a first level effort. Next is, which I would like to start discussing is more about, again, on the video perspective, right? If you have a video data and you want to take it as a live video data and you want to do a processing, right? So let's have it like this. Let's take somebody is having a live video data which is captured and it needs to be processed for some reasons. So let me ask that people who are listening to the session here, if I have a video data, right, which is captured from cameras on the road, what is all can you detect? Can you put in the chat box, please? If I have a video data which is captured as part of cameras, what can you detect? Can you put in the chat box, please? Participants? Botnet dataset is part of security, that is it for attack handling. Yes, participants, if you have cameras, right, and the cameras are taking a live feed of data, what can you process from such a data? Assume the cameras are put up on the road. Can we have your thoughts? You can.
Sir, do you mean the environment we capture?
No, I'm just putting your thought. You walk on the road, there are cameras there, right? Now, given the data coming from the cameras, what can you process? It's an IoT based application only, right? What will be
the pedestrians, the vehicles,
okay.
Natural scenes.
Natural scenes, vehicles, okay. Then?
Pedestrians, people nearby.
People, pedestrians, okay, fine, okay. Right, now, when you're trying to take such a data, right, what would come up is your data will actually populate a set of features, right? So you will have individual images being captured. A camera is a set of images, going to have a live feed of images. So you're going to have images available. So let's take, I say, image 1, image 2, image 3. Okay, right? Now again, I'm asking you, all of you, right? In case I have some data about human beings, right? In case I have one more feature related to the type of environment, right? And I have some features related to the vehicles on the road. Now all this data is captured with respect to the images that is as part of the video. Now what you'll be interested in analyzing? If you're bringing in analytics here, what you'll be interested in analyzing? Can you say your thoughts? Participants, any one of you?
Trajectory of vehicles.
Okay, good. So you'll be interested in finding out the trajectory of vehicles. Okay, fine. So maybe you'll be interested to know whether people are following the traffic rules, right? So that might be one possibility. Then if you're interested in finding the trajectory part, then what you are be interested to know is you will try to make this slightly different.
Pattern or something.
Yeah, please. Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes.
Traffic pattern, sir.
Traffic patterns. Okay, then that case you would be interested to keep it like this. You would say first you would say that what is the number of vehicles? Fine. So on the image, let's take I say 3 vehicles. So you will say that what is a vehicle 1 location? Fine. So what is vehicle 2 location? Right. So this will be again not as an individual value. I think people will know that, right? You will say that it will be an array of value which will have x comma y, right? This will be array of values of x comma y, because each vehicle can be plotted with 2 locations of x and y here. So for an individual image, if I have the value saying number of vehicles is this, what is the vehicle 1 location and vehicle 2 location, then I'll be able to classify the trajectory of the vehicles, right? Okay. What else can you do if you have images of data of an open environment? Let's take it's a road. Participants, what else can you do with the data that you're getting captured with the vehicles on the road or some people walking on the road?
Theft cases, fraudulent.
Okay, theft cases.
People with mask or something. People with wearing mask without mask.
Good. Today's known situation, can we actually see, okay, how many number of people are there, right? And you can try to see for each person, right? People 1, right? People 1, you can say whether they have a mask or not, right? So you say yes, you say yes. You say second person, person 2, whether the person is wearing a mask or not, maybe yes or no, right? This is also going to be very important, because you can expect in the future that if government wants to bring some regulations for alarming diseases like that, the surveillance cameras will have the capability to say that yes, there are 5 people appearing, but let's take person 1, right, is wearing mask, person 2 is not wearing mask, right? If the person 2 is not wearing mask, there is a possibility that this person might have an automatic fine, right? Like today you can see, you might drive a vehicle past a signal believing that there is no traffic police, but you might get an immediate message saying that you have a fine because you crossed the signal. The same thing tomorrow's future, you can expect that if people have to be monitored for mask by imposing a fine, so the camera might have the capability to detect the people, then it will say that people 1 is available, wear mask, people 2 not wear mask, so automatically send a fine to the person, right? Okay, so this, what I'm trying to show you here is possibility of building data. Not all times people will say that I'm working directly with video data. No, you would actually have algorithms which will run on the video data, and that algorithms will actually populate it to a CSV file like this. Once it populates to a CSV file like this, then you can actually write algorithms or codes with whatever approach you know. It can be machine learning or deep learning, and it will work on the data, right? Okay, so closer to this is the data set which I usually suggest to the people. If you can go to the browser, you can check this data set, right, on the internet. If you type outlier data set, right, if you type outlier data set, you will get a data set here from Stony Brook, right? You will get a data set from here called as from Stony Brook here. So this data set as such will have different categories of problems which you can address, right? As I told you, starting with the smallest data set of understanding attacks, right, to many other similar data sets, you can find it in this website here. Please make a note of this. If you want to try something on deep learning with live data, you can take it from here, right? Okay, now the next one would be like, okay, let us come to the next question here. if I have data, so data is coming from images. Now the question is like, given a live data like this, is it possible for me to do some analysis with respect to activities, right? Because activity recognition is now becoming like, is having a big space, in fact, in research also. If you go to internet and type IoT and activity recognition, right? There are a lot of research going on to this. Can you see here? IoT based human activity recognition. What is this is like, let's take you are driving your car and your face is changing a little bit hard. It might try to send a message to your relation saying that you have discomfort in travel. Okay, so anything can be a data that can come up. Let's take you are looking at your camera and you're saying hi, it means that you're happy, right? The same thing if you're going inside a shop where there are a lot of cameras, each cameras can actually pick up your face and it can try to say you back saying that you look happy, you look unhappy, right? Okay. Or let's take you look at a product and you like the product, right? You show a happy face, but when you look at the cost of the product, you show a sad face. Then that means that you want to buy the product, but you're not happy with the price. So understanding the customer's actions, right, can also be built as part of any IoT application, right? So this is one space that is getting a lot of attraction nowadays because every place there are cameras, right? Almost you can see in the bigger cities, you can see not one camera, many cameras. You go to all the gated community in the apartment, you can see that not one camera, many cameras, right? And today with the possibility of security being concerned of health, today most of the gated community environment have started thinking that only this type people with this photos, right, should be allowed inside the gate. You might come in a car, but if the car is showing a person's face who is not recognizable, maybe the gate will not open. So all these are challenges which you can take it as part of your research in your IoT problem, right? So keeping in this line of thought, what we thought is like, can we try out one? So that is where we have made some small research this year. So what we tried out is, can we look at possibility of having data that will come as part of a camera, right? But the data will show us activities of the person, right? So I will show you the discussion part for it. So what we thought of doing is like, can we bring in possibility of looking at live data, right? And understand whether the person can be monitored or not. So this is a video data set you can see here. If you can watch from the video data set will show a person, right? Okay, and you're trying to recognize what the person does, right? So this is a small sample, but the thought process, what we want you to know is like, here we want to actually take a camera which will actually take a live feed, and what it will do is it will try to recognize whether the person is falling or not, right? In case you want to do like that, we can use many architectures. One architecture is you can use RNN, you can use LSTM, right? You can use whichever architecture that you like. So we have made one possibility. If you can see here, this is an existing code what I'm showing. Follow on, I'll show you the output that we have got from our results here. So here, what is this code speaks about? Is this code says that if you have sensors, right, the sensors can actually classify the type of signals, right? So it can classify the type of signals based on the values that it is gathered by the sensors. Then it will be able to say whether the person is walking or walking upstairs, walking downstairs, sitting, standing, laying, all that, right? Then follow on to that, here as such, they have already prepared a data set. So they are classifying the data set as training data set and testing data set, right? Then what they are trying to do is here, they are trying to have the analysis for the signal paths, right? Because signal as such is not going to be one numerical value. So it's going to follow through a path. So here they have signal paths for X and Y. Then comes to the LSTM part. When it comes to the LSTM part, here they are having a data which is already available. So there are totally 7,352 training data sets, right? And these are other
Sir, excuse
parameters.
me, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, if suppose a video session, can we just extract only certain part of the image?
Yeah, it is possible.
It's a
I'll
video
show you
file,
that.
and the entire video session is not going to be taken for analytics, no, sir. So
I'll check that.
Is that
Yeah,
a part
sure.
of?
Ma'am, I got your question, ma'am. I'll answer to your question.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Here as such, we have data that is coming from the sensors. So they are feeding the other parameters, as you can see here, the parameters for the hidden layers, number of classes, all that, learning rate, then loss amount for lambda. Once all these parameters are being provided, it takes a live data and it runs through this model function, that is LSTM underscore RNN, right? And it runs, it will show you the one second. Yes, it will show you the confusion matrix. So this confusion matrix are with respect to the sensors, right? We have told you, that it is able to classify under 6 categories: walking, standing, climbing upstairs, right? The 6 classes are being classified with this type of data, right? Now, this is with sensors. Sensors in the sense, sensors which can actually take the values, and the sensors will capture the signals, right? Now, if you're going to do the same thing with respect to a camera-based solution, what madam's question was like, in a camera, there's a lot of video, all videos come up, there is a lot of data. How can you take my relevant data? Am I right, ma'am? That's your question, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, right. Now, there what we generally suggest is, if you have a video data and it's going to have a lot of images, each images is called as frames. I think each one of you know. There what you can do is you can extract the keyframes alone. So this concept is called as keyframe extraction. Like for example, I'm looking at the camera, then I'm talking. So in the last 2 seconds, I'm idle for some time, then I'm talking, right? So the idle frames is not one, it's more than one. So I don't need all the idle frames. I need one idle frame and a frame at which I've started talking, right? So there you look for something called as keyframe extraction. So if you go to the internet and type keyframe extraction, right? In Python, you'll find the codes. And if there's a question about the algorithms for keyframe extraction, so you can use Euclidean distance-based keyframe. So there's an algorithm on keyframe extraction with Euclidean based. Using that, what will happen is you'll be able to take only the relevant frames, right? Wherever there is a change in one frame to the another, that frame alone will be extracted. So if you have n frames, you will not have the same n frames for processing for your given model. This is one. Second question is like, okay, that is fine. Now in the frame, I want a region of interest alone. Let's take, I want to track only my face. I don't want to track my rest of my information. There, what happens is you are looking at basically ROA. That's your region of interest, right? So if you go to the internet and type ROA extraction, right? Algorithms in video, you will get algorithms for ROA extraction. And most of these algorithms you can see here, right? So most of these algorithms will actually relate it to saying that you are looking at a block of information which you want to extract, right? So block in the sense what? You are talking about a space. It's basically a square or a rectangle, right? It's at least a 2x2 block which you want to match. So one frame to the another, you will try to compare that block region and you will try to show that, yes, this is a block that I want to look for. So this is what is happening with respect to ROI extraction video. There, if you go and type block matching algorithms, you'll get papers on block matching algorithms, right? So using a block matching algorithm, you can match the region of interest of what you have fixed of your current frame with the previous frame, right? So once this is happening, then the next question somebody would ask is, what if it happens if the block is varying? For example, I'm just keeping like this, but I'm keeping a lot of motion up and down, right? There is a varying motion on the face. There's a lot of motion component, right? So there, what people suggest is like you can go for motion compensated, right, algorithms for block matching. You can see here, right? If you go to internet and type motion compensated algorithms for block matching, the motion part of the pixels will not be there. You will assume it as a smooth video, right? Then the next would be is like, see, fixing a block where the block is static, it is fine. Let's take, I'm moving my head forward and backward, right? Now what happens is my ROI also changes with the position of my face. Now there, what people suggest is there is an energy component to the pixels because you're moving your face up and down and like that. So that's the energy component for the pixels. So you have to average out the energy, right? So there you can actually use algorithm, which is called a snake algorithm. That's a very popular algorithm called a snake algorithm, right? The interest of the snake algorithm is, you know the characteristic of a snake, right? You take a snake and put it in a small bowl, it will contract itself. If you take the snake and put it in a larger bowl, it will try to expand itself, but still it carries the same shape. Shape doesn't change. Similarly is your face. Your face is small or big, it's not the question, right? Your face still remains the same. So same thing here. If you have objects which are having non-rigid, face is non-rigid, right? You have a face in the evening, you sleep well and get up, your face will change. But the face remains the same, but the shape alone will change. So there you can actually use snake algorithm along with optical flow for tracking any non-rigid object. So you want to track something in the frame, you'll have to ask a question, what is the type of object, whether it's a rigid object or a non-rigid object. If it is a rigid object, you can go for block matching. If it is a non-rigid object, you will have to go for block matching with possibly a combination of snake algorithm and optical flow. Okay. Ma'am, have I answered to your question, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Sir, but if we compute the snakes, the computation time will be much more higher, no, sir. So instead, can we use a bounding box instead of that? Okay. So that our computation will be less and the response will be very quick.
Okay, bounding box as such will work well for the rigid objects. See, let's take, I'm just sitting, I'm suddenly standing up. So what happens is, still you want to have my ROI, region of interest, right? So there your bounding box will not be square or rectangle. It will overlap with other regions also. So there only solution is you will have to go for optical flow algorithm with the bounding box approach.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Now, keeping in this line of thought, I think I'm getting some questions in chat. Okay, yeah. No questions till now. So keeping in this as line of thought, I'll show you the output that we got for the camera part, right? Now, what we have built is a system which can actually take a live data of person coming inside, right? And it will be able to do some analysis back. One second, it's coming up. Yeah, you can see here, this is an activity-based classification problem that we have built. The camera data is, as it is being provided to the model built on LSTM, it shows an activity as not fault, right? So a person is coming inside, okay, and let's take that person loses control and falls down, right? So it is a fault detection problem. So until the person falls down, it will not show us fall, right? So what we have done is we have taken all possible images and trained using the deep learning model that's on LSTM. Once a person falls down, it will classify the activity as fall, right? Here, there is no ROI. Please try to understand. Here, every pixel here is taken as feature, right? And wherever there are basically corresponding features to be considered, here we have assumed that the background is a stationary background. It is not a varying background, right? And once a person wakes up, right, assume that the person is waking up, right, becomes conscious and wakes up, then automatically the activity will change from fall to not fall. Okay. I think people can understand, right? So now it changes from fall to not fall case, right? This is an example of an IoT based application which can be part of a camera, which can actually recognize people for a fall or a not fall. Where it can be used, answer is very simple. It can be used in multiple places. One, where let's take it's a hospital, and let's take it's a room, somebody is being in the hospital and they get up, they fall down, it can send a message to the nurse. Same thing, let's take you talk about healthcare homes. Today we have got a lot of retirement homes. Somebody is in the room, suddenly falls down. Same thing, aged people at home, suddenly they fall down. Retirement people, or let's take after retirement, somebody is walking on the lawn, right? Suddenly falls down. This can detect, okay? So this is an example of an IoT based application, which you can take it for analyzing any fall detection in problems. Right? Any questions at this point? Participants, any questions at this point?
No, sir.
Okay, if there's no questions, one second, I'll share you one more results that we have got for an IoT application that we are doing now. Just give me a minute. Yeah. Okay. This application is slightly different. What we are trying to do here is like, if you have fishes in the tank, okay, all of you can understand the context, right? There's an aquarium and there's a fishes in the tank, right? Now our question is like, if I have cameras, right, and the data is coming live as part of an IoT application, what can you monitor with such a data? Can you put in the chat box, please? Participants, we are discussing after lunch, so please give your responses. What can you monitor? What can you monitor from a camera which is having information with respect to the fishes in the tank? Can you put in the chat box? Color of the fish, okay. So what do you like, what do you decide based on the color of the fish? Food given to the fish, okay. Okay, you would like to know whether the food is given to the fish in time. Water color, okay, maybe I'll have to clean the fish tank. Okay, good, that's a good thought. Anything else? Anything else? If there is camera, which is part of an IoT application, in a fish tank. Type of fish, okay, how many type of fish do I have? Good, I have 5 types, 6 type of fish. Then, anything else? Okay, this is one requirement that we tried with one of the professors in Australia. So his requirement was like, he's a retired professor. So his thought process is, he has a big fish tank at home, because now after retirement, you know very well that foreigners, they want to relax when they want to completely relax. So he has got a fish tank, and he would like to have fishes, and it's not a small tank, it's a big tank like a pond. So there is a lot of watering, there's a lot of mud, and there is a lot of places where the fish tank is has to be cleaned and so on. So a couple of requirements on his side. So what was we did is we took the data, and his question was like, my fishes should not be hungry, right? So it's closely matches with the food. So his answer is like, how many fishes I have, it's not your question. If I have fish tank with fishes, they should not be hungry. So if that's the case, can you think of a possibility? That was our thought process. So there what we did is we took through the data that we have. So on the data, we were trying to apply models, and we were trying to see what results we could get, right? So we got some interesting results with the data. So I'll show you here. Okay, you can see here, are you able to see the screen, ma'am? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you can see here, this is a camera data, which is part of a fish tank. Again, it's an IoT based application. So here we have applied optical flow with snake, right? So it tracks the fishes. Can you find it? Can track the fishes, right? So how many number of fishes is not our worry. So as the fish moves, it tracks. Now his situation is very simple. When you put fish food, what happens is fishes which are big, will come to the top and take the food. So the smaller fishes do not get the food. So he just want to have a solution saying there are 5 fishes coming at the top, right? How many big fishes, how many small fishes? If all are small fishes, no problem. Everybody will get food. If there are 3 big fishes and 2 small fishes, then the food quantity has to be more at that particular point, right? That's the thought process here. So we have got the first level results where we are able to track the fishes. And by the quantification of area, we are now able to say small fishes and big fish. And now we are going to the next stage where if there are 5 fishes in that area, 3 is big, 2 is small, can you conclude saying that you have to have put more food or less food or not, right? This is the next one. This implementation is done in Python. And for all your information, wherever you are looking at problems like this, where there is an image processing component coming up, then you will have to go for using this library, which is called as OpenCV library, right? OpenCV library. This is also part of your third-party framework that you can install, right? If you open your Anaconda and you want to install, you can install OpenCV directly. So if you go to the internet and type pip install OpenCV, you'll get a command, right? So this is install OpenCV. So advantages, you can actually do applications which you want to do with video or images. One ma'am was asking, ROI based block matching, can I do? Yes, you can do it. So if you go for OpenCV and look for the code for block matching, you can see here, you'll find the code, right? The same code, you can actually take it for and relate it with the Python framework, right? That's it. So the last part which I would like to show for conclusion is many architectures are there. So there is always a question or debate, right? Which architecture is good for what reasons? So a quick conclusion of the architectures. If you take CNN, it's very powerful, right? Compared to RNN. But again, it depends on the type of data. If it is going to be image or video data, CNN is perfect. But if you're going to take a data which is going to be having text like sequences like that, RNN is better. The other 2 architectures which complement each other is GRU and LSTM, right? You have seen the keyword of GRU when I showed you the code for the fault recognition. So here, as far as GRU is concerned, it takes less parameters, but LSTM will take more parameters. So memory is less for GRU, memory is more for GRU. Execution time is faster because training parameters are less and memory consumption is less. But other thing that you have to agree would be is the accuracy part. Accuracy will be low compared to LSTM. So if you are deciding on accuracy factor, then you have to go for LSTM. So the problem actually is very important. If you want to classify a human face, that is not a problem. But if you want to recognize a human face, whether the person is a terrorist or not, then the closest level accuracy is very important. So there you will have to choose an architecture, right? So last one would be some performance parameters which need to be understood. One, I told you confusion matrix is perfect. You can go for accuracy. There's something called as detection rate is there, right? In all this, you'll find something called as TP, TN, that's true positive, true negative, false positive, false negative, right? So what is positive, negative? We have already told you. So if you have a data set, you will have positive samples and negative samples. So a positive sample recognized as a positive sample is true positive. A positive sample recognized as a negative sample would be a true negative, right? Similarly, false positive, now you will be able to understand, right? What is false positive? So the whole research or whole thought of using all these models is to reduce the number of false positives. And the other metrics that you will be calculating every time is a logarithmic loss. Then sensitivity is also possible to be calculated. Specificity also can be calculated. But when you take it as a research problem or a project, please do not take all the metrics. Whichever metrics is suitable to the problem, you can take. But common metrics that are generally chosen is precision and recall, right? Based on this, you'll be able to find the precision recall curve, right? And the other metric is F1 score, which is also important to know the accuracy of testing that you have calculated. You have done different testing steps, right? You would have say that I have tested with this 100 records, 1000 records, all that. But how do you accurately say your test is actually based on F1 score? And this will be directly relating to the model performance. I use CNN, you use RNN. How will we test our model performance, right? You can use the F1 score there. Last one is ROC, that is your receiver operating characteristic curve. So that actually will be a plot between false positive rate and true positive rate, right? So you need to look for your ROC curve, right? ROC curve area is very important, because this will actually say that the amount of classification is high or not. Or other way of talking about this ROC is this will give direct interpretation to the previous two metrics that we have seen, right? One is your sensitivity, yeah. One is your sensitivity and next is your specificity, right? Okay. That's all from my side. So today's session, I think I have given you a conclusion on how to use machine learning, deep learning algorithms for two types of data. One data where actually data can come into a synthetic data, a CSV file, or other data where the data can come as part of videos, which is captured from a camera here, right? Any questions from your side? Please ask your questions.
Sir?
Yes, madam. Any questions from your side? Please clarify your questions.
Sir, if you have a data set and an algorithm, we are training it. And after the training, then finally we get 100% accuracy. So because we keep on training the same data set and finally we train it to 100% accuracy.
Okay.
Well, is that true? Is that the correct method?
1 second, ma'am. Ma'am, actually the solution would be like, it depends on the type of data. If you have tried all possible data and fed to your training model and it gives you 100% accuracy, you can conclude that your data is perfect, your model is perfect. And again, it depends on the testing data also. If you give 30% testing data also, your accuracy is close to 100%. You can assume that your model is perfectly fine.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This is one point which I insist to my scholars also. Usually you should spend a lot of time on the data. A lot of people, sometimes they do a mistake. They will learn algorithm, go to data, but that's not the usual way. You should actually spend time on the data, analyze the data, and keep a lot of inference about the data that you're using. Then if you go to the model, it will be very helpful to address your research. Can we use this analytics in edge computing? Yes, you can use it. Again, it depends on the problem that you're looking at. Any other questions?
So this edge computing is the computation done at the end, at the client side. So your phone is muted, sir.
Sorry. Okay, let's take you are in your campus and you have every labs having cameras. Okay. So if every lab as such, if they have the camera and there is a server in the lab, which can actually take the live feed of the camera and do a processing, right? There the processing is done at the lab level itself. It will not come to the main server level. Okay. That is the smallest way of looking at edge computing. If the computing can be done at the end devices, right, rather than relying on the end systems, there what you can say is edge computing works.
Okay, sir.
To all the participants, I work with the area of video analytics and deep learning, and I have an ongoing funded project from IBM where we look at malware analysis for deep learning as a solution. Right? That means if you have a large network data given from sensors or network devices or computers, can we detect attacks and classify attacks using deep learning? So that's an ongoing project. But other side, if you look at my research scholars, they work completely on video data and network data. In network, we are looking at network behavior analysis, right? And there we are trying to address how deep learning can be used. If there are any more questions, please drop me a mail. Maybe if there is some line of thoughts in similar lines where we are working, please drop me a mail. If I know, I'll try to answer to your questions. From my side, I convey my sincere thanks to Sharda ma'am and Momoti sir and the team members of the institution for giving me a chance to present and discuss my ideas where deep learning can be used as part of IoT. And I give my sincere thanks to my PhD guide, Dr. S. N. Shivanandam sir. He is my computer science professor at PhD. He's my guide who has brought me into this area of machine learning and video data. Thank you all. If there's any questions, I will take it up.
This is Dr. N.S. Gauri Ganesh. So really it's a very enjoyable session and an informative session also. So along with the concepts, you had given a very thoughtful, inspirational information on both the research side as well as the, you had shown the demonstration also very nicely on various aspects also. Actually, this is my question. Actually, I had also posted in my chat box also. So, my just if you can throw the light on this edge computing, um, by because as my thought process is like a deep learning requires a lot of computing power, and the devices that we have at the edge, the computing power, battery power, and there are many aspects that we are looking into being considered. So, you told that this same analytics can be applied onto the edge computing also. Can you throw some light on this? So, just want to give on this aspect.
Yes, sir. Just give me 2 minutes. I will unshare the screen. I'll discuss. One
Yes,
second.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, fine. See, with what I know, I'm trying to explain you with my limited understanding.
Okay.
As far as edge computing is concerned, it can be understood as computing coming back to the devices. So let's take you want to do a face detection, all right? And you have cameras everywhere. The cameras is picking up my data. Then it sends the data to the server, and the server is able to actually recognize that I'm so-and-so person sitting here, and my name is Sendil Kumar Tangavi, right? That's it. Now, if you want to do the same thing and make it available as part of application on the end device. Now we are interacting as part of a laptop where there is an application running, it's taking live feed. But instead, if it can be part of a mobile, also you can conduct the same Zoom meeting, right? Your Zoom meeting can be conducted. Now there can be an application that can run in your mobile, which can be an Android driven application, which can actually detect your face. That means it can detect my face and say, Senthil Kumar is talking, right? So a smallest thought would be like building an application which can actually do a face detection on the Android mobile itself. Like as you can see here, no, adding a face detection to the Android, right? So Android app is running on your mobile. It is itself detecting your face. It will itself recognize your face rather than it's putting the data to the server. That can be a smallest place where you can speak about edge computing. Have I answered your question, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very nicely. Actually, I thought because you had connected this deep learning in the IoT devices, so just to put a connectivity for our topic, so I just asked this question. I heartfully thank on this aspect of your delivery. Very nice session. And any questions from the audience? I just want to once again ask if any questions. We will take it up, sir. Otherwise, we will
Sir,
end up this session. Shilpa
sir,
ma'am, is
good
there
evening,
any
sir.
question?
Sir, Gauri sir, this is me,
Ma'am.
Sharda.
Ma'am.
Sir, good evening, sir. This
Good
is
evening.
Dr. Sharda, sir.
Good
Sir,
evening.
sir, sir, thank you very much for obliging and taking 2 sessions in our FDP, sir. Your sessions were very illustrative and practical oriented, sir, and that made it very interesting for all the participants. Usually, if there are 2 sessions, we get a little apprehensive, but your sessions were so interesting that it really made our day, sir. We thank you very much, and I think we will be contacting you again in the future also for some more expert talks and sessions like this, sir, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Sure. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Yes, sir. And sir, I hope you have shared your contact details with the participants, sir, because I think they would really want to get in touch with you for their research problems and further doubts. I think you have given your mail ID. Otherwise, I will send it to the participants. If you agree, I will post you.
Please share my email ID to the participants.
Yeah.
It's a learning from somebody's problems, right? What they work in the research. That much I believe. So yes. That's how I have improved. I have started with my research on traffic monitoring on live data with machine learning. There I used a surf-based video detector and detector and tracked vehicles back in 2014. Then after, looking at different types of data, now I have a confidence. Data is data. What we need from the data is our intelligence, right? If we can make models for it, solution is ready. So no problem, please share my email ID. I'll be happy to interact and we'll surely see this interaction forward. And any open problem that you feel that we can try out also jointly, please let me know. It will be a learning for me also.
It was really a very good day of learning for us, sir. And I have to say on the other side, I thought your PPTs were having a very good visual appeal, sir.
Thank you.
You have paid special attention to designing the PPTs because we have seen so many PPTs and I really appreciate the way you have designed the PPTs. There's a lot to learn from you, sir. So thank you very much, sir. Have a good day, sir. And thank you all participants also. Hope to see you all tomorrow for the other sessions also. Please log in on time. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all. Be safe and have a happy day. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Thank you.
Sir, Gauri sir, I think we can sign off, sir. Is Shilpa
okay,
going to...
Okay, ma'am. Okay, sign off.
Shilpa is going to say something or has she addressed the
participants? No, ma'am.